So we've been testing these 206 amp hour batteries for about 4 months now. We really wanted to make sure to do some serious testing before we did this review. Unlike our last battery review where we kind of reviewed it right away, just giving you kind of our first impressions. But with these batteries, we ended up purchasing them directly from SOK for full price. And then once we supply this review, we are going to be refunded some of the money. So we have a bit of a sponsorship going on or a deal, but we're going to give you our full in-depth thoughts on these particular batteries. Spoiler alert, we really like them. SOK has a variety of different sizes to fit your needs, from the 12 volt 100 amp hour to this monster, which really isn't that much of a monster considering how much is in this thing. It's just a very tall battery, and this is the 12 volt 206 amp hour. We really like this form factor because it fits more or less in a compartment that a standard like 26 group battery would fit, but it's just much deeper, so you need the height to be able to store this. You could also store it on its side because it's a lithium battery and it doesn't mind that, but we really, for our space underneath the bilge area, this is exactly what we needed to fit. We wanted to have 3 of them, so we have 3 fit in the bilge area. The challenge with that is we couldn't fit them all right beside each other, so we had one in the front compartment where I removed this, and 2 others in the compartment just after that. And the challenge with that is when I first installed them, I just connected all the batteries together with whatever wires I could scrounge together out of the boat, and I realized very quickly that that wasn't going to work over the long term because the lithium batteries are such a flat curve. They don't feed power from one to the other very easily. They like to go out of balance very easily unless you set up bus bars and you have positive cable running to your positive bus bar, and the length of the cable is the same length for each battery, so that the resistance from each battery is the same going to your main point where you then tie off everything else too. So that really made a big difference as far as one battery wasn't cycling at all and the other 2 were cycling a lot. One of the features I really like about these batteries, because at least myself, I'm a little nerdy about all of this on board. I really like to look at my voltages and make sure my cells are balanced. Even when we built our previous bank back on Wildly Intrepid 1, I was constantly checking cell voltages just to see was the battery falling out of balance. And anyway, I like that stuff. So these batteries make it really easy to be nerdy about it, and they have a Bluetooth app that you can log into and you can see so much information. It's really like the only way to go in my opinion now. After having these and a battery that doesn't allow you to do that, I will never go back to a battery that doesn't have a Bluetooth integrated and lets you talk with the BMS and see what is going on in there. Because when your battery decides to cut off, you want to know the reason it cut off. Did it cut off from a cell getting too low? Did it cut off from a short? Did it cut off? You know, the list goes on. There's a lot of reasons why a battery, lithium battery, would disconnect its BMS to save the battery. They also, depending on the model that you're looking for, if you're in a cold climate, you can get them built with built-in heaters. Now, personally, I don't think that's a necessity at all. I don't think you really need built-in heaters, and if you did, you could probably just build them yourself, or just simply insulating the boxes. You know, putting these inside of some sort of insulation will keep them a lot. You'll be able to use them even well below zero, because the battery, provided you're using the battery and it's drawing some current out of it, you'll be slightly heating the battery just with that. So we've noticed even when it's below zero, which hasn't happened too often, but it has happened, the batteries are still 10, 15 degrees higher, even without insulation. I think the internal heaters are very much for very cold climates that stay cold. Something else that most lithium batteries have is some sort of balancing feature. So these ones have a BMS that balances at the top of its charge. So as the battery gets fairly close to its full charge, you'll see on the Bluetooth app that the little balance status is turned on, and you can actually see the voltage differential between each cell inside of here. There's 4 cells, and you can make sure it's actually working. Whereas our other bank at Uniwix, we are unable to determine if it's actually balanced. We just have to hope that it's doing it when it's at the top of its voltage range. It also has 3,000 to 8,000 cycles that these batteries can do, which is huge comparing to a lead acid battery. It's very comparable to a lot of other batteries in the lithium world, but it's still just a ridiculous amount of cycles. We've had this for 4 months, again with 600, a little over 600 amp hours total capacity, and we've only cycled the batteries like 11 times or something. So they're gonna last us a lifetime provided we take good care of them. Something else that's really handy that not all batteries have is just these little carrying handles to make it easier to lift them out of wherever they're at. A slight downside is it makes it a little wider of a battery if you're constrained by size, but not really much because these bolts on the outside almost protrude just as much. But really nice to be able to lift them like that, not have to get your hands out underneath the battery to be able to pull it in and out. SOK also provides you with a 7-year warranty, which is pretty good for a battery in my opinion. So they really stand by their products. But my absolute favorite feature, so all you got to do to service anything that happens to go wrong in this battery is remove the 10 little Allen key bolts. The top comes off, and then you can swap out the BMS, you can swap out a cell because they're bolted on, not welded on like a lot of manufacturers are doing. And so if you have a problem with anything internally here, you can just get a replacement part and have your battery up and running again, which is huge. If you're trying to do that with some of the other batteries, even just like our Uniwicks, they're all welded. Each cell is welded together, so you're going to have to figure out a way to solder it or weld it, and it's just not something I want to deal with on a boat. So this is just really nice where I can just undo some bolts, swap out a cell, and have ourselves up and running again. I mean, we don't carry spare cells on board, but it's just nice to know that I can work on this myself, especially being nerdy and liking the whole lithium battery stuff. Something else that's really good about this battery for our environment is it's completely made of plastic. All of this case, the top, everything is made of plastic, aside from the internal components. So that allows us to, I mean, I wouldn't submerge this, but it probably could be submerged. I'm pretty sure there's a gasket around here. I could take this lid off and show you guys, but if you're really curious, there's a good 20 videos or so online of people disassembling these batteries, so go ahead and check those out so I don't have to bother. But really love the design and the DIY-ness of these batteries. It's probably the main feature that we actually bought these batteries for. So like many BMSs, this battery has a low temperature cutoff for the charging circuit, because you never want to charge a battery when it's below a certain temperature that makes it so that you're going to damage the cells. It also has high temperature disconnect on both the charging and discharging side of things, but that's pretty standard nowadays for BMSs. You can connect these batteries in different configurations from 12 volt, 24 volt, all the way up to 48 volt, so that allows you a little bit of ability to use them for different applications, which is really nice. The recommended charge for this battery, just for the single battery, is 40 amps. But it can take up to 70 amps of charge. Now, because we have 3 of these in total, we can, basically multiply that by 3, and you can safely charge it at higher rates. The max discharge of this battery is 170 amps with a peak of 200 amps for 3 seconds. These lugs fit a 5/16 lug or an 8 mil, and the whole battery actually only weighs 48 pounds, which, if anybody's tried to outfit their boat with lead acid batteries in the 200 amp hour range, you're going to be well over that, probably closer to 4 times that weight. So really light battery for how much power is in there. Big advantage with lithium, not just this brand, but any lithium, is that you can discharge it almost completely and then recharge it without hurting it a whole lot or at all. So whereas with lead acid or AGMs, unless we're talking about a Firefly AGM, you can discharge those a little bit more. But typically you shoot for a 50% depth of discharge. And then so there's 50% of that battery capacity that you can't quite use. So if you have a 200 amp hour battery, you only really have a 100 amp hour battery if it's lead acid. With this 200 amp hour battery, we pretty much have 200 usable amp hours within it. So that allows us to, really cycle the batteries a lot harder, a lot deeper than you would normally be able to do. The other big advantage over lithium that lithium has, that you really only notice when you finally make the switch from lead acid to lithium, is just how much more efficient your charging cycles can be. So if you're charging with solar like we are, you end up just packing the solar in. When there's nice sun, you're getting like full amps all the way up until the very end of when it's like close to fully charged, then it finally trickles off. But if you're doing that with lead acid, it's going to trickle off much sooner, and you're going to be putting in just a few amps while it finishes off its charge cycle. So that's another huge thing. So your solar that you have, you can get away with less solar with lithium than you can if you have lead acid. So that's a huge advantage that we found is, I mean, we're over solared on this boat now for our battery banks that we need to charge because they're all lithium now. So we can really make the most use of that sun when it's out. So this is the Bluetooth app. Tells you which battery you have, because there's a mini serial number on each one. And it tells you your rated capacity and everything else. This one's coming up as 210. It'll calculate and calibrate after you've cycled it fully twice. So it might change, you know, your numbers may be different. This is also the old version of the app, so once you update it, this CMOS and DMOS will say charge and discharge. So when your battery's fully charged, this CMOS or charge toggle will turn off, and then it won't allow any more charge into your battery. Same thing with the discharge one, it will stop it from being able to discharge. You also have your voltage, how much current is coming out of your battery, which I've noticed isn't always very accurate if I'm measuring it against a clamp-on amp meter, but it gives you an idea at least. You're much better off having a smart shunt or some sort of shunt to measure what exactly is coming off of your batteries. You also have how many times it's cycled, which I haven't quite figured out yet, but I'm pretty sure it's just measuring your capacity and basically basing your cycle time on how many times you've gone through your full capacity, but that I'm not 100% sure. If your battery has heating, it'll tell you if the heating status is turned on. It'll tell you your proc state, which is essentially if these different sensors are turned off for whatever reason. You can go up to the little two dots at the top here, go to proc state, and it'll tell you which state is one of these will be lit up. So is it your cell's been overcharged or over discharged, or any of these states of the hardware basically. And so it'll tell you what's going on and why is your battery doing what it's doing. And then it'll tell you your internal temperature of the battery. Then the most important thing for me is the one that I like the most is this balance status down here. It basically, as this V differential changes, so the difference between your voltage max and your voltage min, this will increase, especially as you get closer to the top of your charge. And as it increases up to a certain point, your balance status will start turning on and off, trying to charge each one of these cells, which again, really nice to be able to see the voltage in millivolts of each cell and watch them yourselves, or you can just, you know, see your max and your min. But really cool app, really enjoy it a lot. You can go up here, search for a device, and jump to your different batteries. We have 3 of them, so you can easily just select which battery you want to look at and check to see what it's doing. So if you have any problems, you don't have to start disconnecting wires and everything else, and you can just look at what it's doing. There's also some parameters and stuff that you can change, but I believe they have them locked with a password because they don't want you changing stuff. From what I can tell from the forums, what SOK is getting the most requests for getting those passwords for, so that you can change aspects of the battery, different parameters. It tends to be changing the charge voltage to be a lower state of charge, so that you get, instead of only getting say 3,000 cycles, you can get closer to 8,000. The problem with doing that is if you set your charge to be so much lower so that you're not fully cycling them all the time, maybe you're only doing an 80% cycle, they'll never balance. So each battery will slowly get out of balance. Each cell within your battery will, one cell in particular will get out of balance at least, and you'll end up with a battery that won't have its full capacity anymore because the batteries are too far out of balance. So as your batteries get out of balance, as your cells get out of balance, I should say, then you will slowly lose capacity, because one cell will say, oh, I'm fully discharged a lot faster than your other cells, or vice versa. It'll say it's fully charged a lot faster than your other cells. So the problem with trying to say, oh, I only want my battery to charge this much, is you're actually just degrading your battery over time. These batteries, because they're drop-in replacements, you want them to charge fully. You don't necessarily want to float them all the time, but you want them to charge to their full capacity so that the balance status turns on and it starts balancing each cell individually. Otherwise, you're going to have problems down the road. Some of the main things that we really like, just to recap everything, is this plastic case. Super sweet for our environment right now. The BMS inside is, again, just to me, I can't go back to not having a BMS that I can see the cell voltages, the total voltage of the battery, the difference between the different cells, whether or not the battery is balancing. And even if the battery decides to cut off, I can log into that app and see exactly the reason why. Was it because one of the cells got too charged and the battery's gotten too far out of balance? Or did I short circuit something? You know, did I try to draw too much from the battery? All of these things can be checked within the Bluetooth app. So really cool how you can just pull up on your phone without having to measure anything, without having to take this apart to measure each cell. I can see everything in that app. Finally, the easy maintainable aspect of these batteries comparing to many other batteries on the market. Another big plus compared to maybe a comparable battery from, say, Victron or Battleborn is the price. For 206 amp hours, it was roughly $1,000, and price may vary depending on when you're seeing this, but that's almost half the price comparing to those other manufacturers. So that's a big plus for me for our frugalness on Wildly Intrepid here. So for anybody who's interested in checking out SOK, the links will be down in the description. I'm not even sure if we get a kickback from any of them, but if you're looking for them, that's where you want to go down below. And yeah, we're just overall really stoked about these batteries. If I'm going to compare them with the other batteries that we got from Unuix makes a great battery as well, but these just have so much more features that it's worth paying that extra little bit amount of money for, in my opinion. They just seem well manufactured. They just seem like they care about their batteries. They care about their customers, providing a 7-year warranty. So you really you can't go wrong with these. So far they've been running flawlessly, except for that time when I had the battery cables different lengths, but that was my own fault. That wasn't the batteries themselves. And yeah, they've just been outperforming what I would have thought. Actually, when I fully cycled one of these batteries, it's getting closer to like 230 amps or 200, getting a little bit more amp hours out of these batteries than what they're rated for, which is what you'd expect. You don't want to get a 200 amp hour battery and it's actually a 180 amp hour battery. So it's good to see that they undersize the rating of what these batteries actually are, and you're actually getting slightly more than what you're paying for.